Okay, in this discussion, we're going to talk about sex determination in the Y chromosome. And you guys had a reading that you did that kind of talked about how this whole thing was discovered. And basically, what we learned is that the Y chromosome contains the SRY gene, which codes for proteins that induce the gonads to become testicles. Okay, and in the absence of this protein, the gonads, of course, form the ovaries because the embryo is really neither male nor female, with the exception of the XX or the XY chromosomes, until this gene gets switched on. And that was part of the story with how they discovered this whole thing. So if you haven't looked at that reading, go into your OneNote and look at that. All right. So as far as the prenatal gonad development in males, during the first 6 weeks of embryonic development, you can't distinguish a male from the female embryo. Okay, they look remarkably similar in that they have a pair of unisex gonads and two sets of primitive tubing, the Wolffian system and the Mullerian system. And if you recall in class, I said men are kind of hairy like wolves, so that's a way that you can remember the Wolffian system is what's going to become the male reproductive system. And if the the instructions from the SRY gene aren't there, then the Mullerian system will become the female reproductive system. Okay, so during the 7th week of gestation, what you basically have is the SRY gene gets switched on for a few hours, and this kind of leads to a cascade of events that's going to turn on a bunch of different types of genes that's going to stimulate the development of the testes. And the testes themselves are going to produce two types of hormones. You have anti-Mullerian hormone and you have testosterone. And what the anti-Mullerian hormone does, as the name suggests, is it destroys the Mullerian duct system, which would become the female if it weren't present. And the testosterone itself is going to have a protective feature. It's going to protect the Wolffian system from destruction, that would otherwise occur if the testosterone wasn't present. And the Wolffian ducts are going to grow and form the internal components of the male reproductive system: the prostate gland, the seminal vesicles, the vas deferens, and so forth. Now, the testes, of course, produce the semen, and these consist of a bunch of highly coiled tubules called seminiferous tubules where the sperm are going to form. Okay, and the tubules also produce these sugary type of solution that's rich in fructose, and what it's going to do is it's going to help the sperm on their journey during reproduction. And in the epididymis, this is where the mature sperm get stored, and they're kind of behind the testicles, and that's where after the sperm have been made, they get stored for reproduction. Okay, the prostate gland is a gland in the male reproductive, or in the male system. Males have them, females don't. In the male reproductive system, that provides an alkaline type of a solution to kind of offset the acidic environment of the female's reproductive system. So we talked about some GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, and in both males and females, this is produced in the hypothalamus, and it's stored in the anterior pituitary. And when triggered, it triggers the release of follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone from the anterior pituitary. Okay, so GnRH, and I might have just misspoke, so let me rephrase. The GnRH is made and released by the hypothalamus, and it has an effect on the anterior pituitary by releasing LH and FSH, stimulating the release of LH and FSH. Okay, the FSH, of course, the S in Sertoli, the FSH stimulates the Sertoli cells to help induce spermatogenesis, as well as the luteinizing hormone acts on the Leydig cells, the L for luteinizing hormone and the L in the Leydig. It stimulates the production of testosterone, which also is going to kickstart the production of spermatogenesis. So the Leydig cells are found in between the seminiferous tubules, and it produces testosterone and a number of other types of male hormones, which we refer to as androgens. And the testosterone promotes the differentiation of the spermatogonia, these first kind of germ types of cells, into a mature sperm. It stimulates the development of prenatal genitalia in the embryo. It promotes the development of the secondary sexual characteristics in men, and it helps to maintain sex drive. And we talked in class, the secondary sex characteristics are like the increased musculature when boys go through puberty and become men. Like a more pronounced jaw, their Adam's apple in their throat kind of enlarges a little bit, facial hair, axillary hair under the arm, hair in the groin region, on the chest, things like that. That's what the secondary sex characteristics are. Okay, the vertebrate reproductive systems in terms of the testes, the testosterone activates genes in the Sertoli cells. And this is what's going to promote the differentiation of the spermatogonia. So if you look here, these diploid cells, these are the spermatogonia. And those testosterone is going to act on those and stimulate the divisions. And what we said in class is you're going to go from the spermatogonium to the primary spermatocyte, the secondary spermatocyte, and then spermatid. So what testosterone is going to do is it's going to induce or stimulate mitosis in these spermatogonia, so that they're going to start to divide and be able to produce these primary spermatocytes, which are diploid cells that undergo meiosis 1 and then meiosis 2, and then ultimately give rise to the cell that are going to become the sperm. Okay, and these are going to occur, of course, in the Sertoli cells, or excuse me, in the seminiferous tubules, in the testes, and it's going to also be promoted by the Sertoli cells. So you can see here, here's a Sertoli cell, and the testosterone is going to activate the genes that's going to help this entire process. Okay, so the Sertoli cells are also responsible for protecting and nurturing these developing sperm. They're making certain things that are going to kind of support their development along the way. And one of the differences between males and females is males are going to begin producing sperm once they're matured, once they go through puberty, and they're going to produce it kind of continuously throughout the rest of their life. And the females, of course, they're born with all of the eggs that they're ever going to have, or at least that's the conventional wisdom. There may be some stem cells that are in the ovaries that give rise to more egg cells. But the conventional wisdom is they're born with all of the eggs that they'll ever have, and each month a few of the eggs are going to kind of become stimulated, and ultimately you're going to give or release one egg, perhaps two in the case of twins, but oftentimes just one egg is going to get released for fertilization. And then that process occurs kind of on a cyclical basis every month until the women hit menopause. Okay? So during embryonic development, these primordial germ cells in the testes are going to kind of give rise to these spermatogonia, which, we just talked about, or will give rise to the sperm starting at puberty. And the spermatogonia, of course, develop into these spermatocytes and then ultimately become these spermatids. And during this process, we're going to go from these diploid cells in the spermatogonia to spermatids, which are haploid cells, which are ultimately going to become the sperm after they've gone through the maturation. The sperm in most species contains the nucleus, which contains, of course, the genes, and then an acrosome, or the tip of the sperm, which is going to contain some enzymes which assist the entry of the sperm nucleus into the egg so that you can restore the ploidy, so that you can go from the haploid egg and the haploid sperm to give rise to that zygote, which is going to be the diploid organism. Okay? Now, in terms of the female, during about the 12th week of gestation, the unisex gonads begin to transform into the ovaries. There's no SRY protein, there's no anti-Mullerian hormone, and very little testosterone. So the Wolffian duct system begins to disintegrate because that testosterone provides the protective measure for the Wolffian system. There is very little of that, so the Wolffian system begins to break down. The Mullerian system isn't being attacked by the anti-Mullerian hormone system, so the estrogen is going to stimulate that female duct system to kind of arise out of the Mullerian system, and that's going to give rise to the fallopian tubes, the uterus, the vagina, and all of the obvious kind of differences in the external female genitalia. Okay? So some of the roles of estrogen: this is going to work with progesterone, as we've said, to promote the preparation and maintenance of the uterine lining for pregnancy. Okay, it's going to induce the release of LH, which is going to trigger the ovulation. It's going to promote secondary sexual characteristics in females, and we said that those, of course, some of those are the axillary hair and the hair around the groin, the growth and enlargement of the breast tissue, and those types of things, and then it's going to lead to the changes in the hormone system, which leads to menstruation, and it's also responsible for maintaining sexual drive in much the same way that testosterone is in men. Okay, so the ovaries themselves. This is found, of course, within the abdomen, and the ovaries contain lots and lots of follicles, and if you recall, these follicles become stimulated. That's what's going to give rise to the egg, and you can see here just the picture. This is very similar to the one that you guys had to go through and label as an assignment in class. Okay, and the follicles are kind of surrounding the egg, and all of these cells are basically there to kind of nourish and protect the developing eggs. All right, and the cells of the follicles produce the estrogens, and these are the primary sex hormones. And these things are going to interact, if you recall from talking in class, they're going to interact estrogen, progesterone to kind of prevent the release of the GnRH, to prevent the release of the LH and FSH and so forth. And it's also going to promote the thickening of the endometrial lining. All right. The follicle cells that are present, these ones, once they're stimulated, they're going to grow and give rise to the corpus luteum. And then if the egg does not get fertilized, the corpus luteum is going to disintegrate and a new follicle will be stimulated during the next cycle. And we said in class, of course, that if pregnancy does occur, then that corpus luteum is going to continually be stimulated, and it's going to produce the estrogen and progesterone, and we'll get more into that in the next talk that we have here. Okay. So the egg gets released into the abdominal cavity, and if we go back here just briefly, the point right here, there's a small kind of, I guess, opening there from the standpoint of these things aren't physically connected. There is a small kind of opening where when the egg gets released, it kind of passes through the abdominal fluid on its way into the fallopian tube, and then it migrates down, and if fertilization occurs, it implants on the uterine wall. Okay, so the opening of the oviduct or the fallopian tube there, you have this funnel-like opening, and what it does is it has some cilia in there, and it kind of helps to draw the fluid and the eggs into them, and the cilia help move that egg down the uterus, and if fertilization does occur, then it's going to implant, of course, in the uterine wall, and then pregnancy will ensue. So with oogenesis now, this begins in the female embryo. And we said that the female is born with all of the eggs that they're going to have. And what you have basically is all of these oocytes are going to be arrested in prophase 1 of meiosis 1. And then this is where they're referred to as the primary oocytes. Okay. At puberty, of course, once ovulation starts to occur, the hormonal changes occur, and the woman starts menstruating, you get the release of FSH and LH, and the monthly release of FSH is going to kind of stimulate an egg, a few of the follicle cells to kind of give rise to an egg, and of course only one is going to be released. But what it does is it stimulates the meiosis 1 to complete, and then it enters into meiosis 2, and it will stop at metaphase 2. And if there's sperm present and the sperm and the egg unite, then what that event does is it triggers the completion of metaphase 2 and meiosis 2, and then eventually the sperm nucleus and the egg nucleus will unite and give rise to the zygote. And what happens is of course pregnancy ensues, and then you'll stop the whole hormonal system, and we'll get more into that, and we've discussed this in class too. You'll stop that whole hormonal system so that pregnancy will continue. Okay, so there's three main differences now between spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Meiotic divisions and oogenesis are unequal, and you probably remember that from when we talked about meiosis last year. You have a single daughter cell, okay, that's going to give rise to one functional egg, and then 3 polar bodies, which will eventually disintegrate. Most cells from which the eggs arise are thought to be from cells which continuously arise. Okay, or excuse me, are not thought to be. The conventionalism is they're not thought to be. There is some research that suggests that there might be some stem cells that would give rise to new eggs, but for our purposes, the conventionalism prevails, is that the woman is born with all of the eggs that she'll ever have, and they're not continuously arising like the sperm are in the male. And then oogenesis has long resting periods, and you can look at it from when it starts in embryonic development to when it picks up again during puberty, or you can look at the idea of the egg going through a monthly basis, being released and giving rise to an egg which is able to be fertilized, versus sperm in men, which is continuously produced. Okay, So now in the next topic, the last one, we're going to talk about the human female reproductive cycle. And we spent a lot of time in this in class, so I'll be going over this so that we can get a better handle on some of the things that we talked about. Okay, so we'll talk to you soon.